Okay. It's great to have an excited crowd here tonight. So you probably noticed that I'm not Andy Jones. Andy is either in an airport or on an airplane or a taxi. He had a little trouble getting back from his vacation in Mexico yesterday. And so he's been enjoying Miami's airport for a while. He couldn't make it back here in time for tonight. So you're stuck with me. Welcome everybody to our 7th Trust Talk of the year. In our first 6 talks, what we call our winter series, we had 3 with a nature theme, 1 with a history theme, 1 about rugs and the Antiques Roadshow that we aren't quite sure how to categorize, and 1 from David Starbuck Smith about health and wellness. Tonight, the start of our spring series, it's a health and wellness presentation about what the world's top athletes can teach us about aging well. Our presenter, Grosicki, is a staff scientist at Whoop, a wearable technology about which many of you know. Greg is here tonight because of Tammy Randolph. Where's Tammy? Tammy's worked closely with the Trust Talk Committee for some time now to bring speakers to you on a variety of health and wellness topics. For example, in this upcoming April 16th, she has Dr. Maurizio Buscarini. Everybody want to say that with me? He's a urologist at Buford Memorial coming to talk about prostate cancer. There's a lot of people in this room who know a lot about it. The committee appreciates having involved. And given the interest in the speakers she brings, it will be increasing the number of health and wellness trust talks in the future. One last thing about Greg, our speaker, Alan Darr is his father-in-law. So who better than Alan to introduce Greg?
Full house. It's nice to see so many people excited about this topic. But we certainly know that Greg is excited. It's his ideal job, he's told us several times. Before this, he spent some time with Medifast studying and supporting weight loss drugs. But most of his career prior to that was in academia, where he was a tenured professor and lab director at Georgia Southern in exercise science and human physiology. He has his PhD and so many other degrees I can't explain. So he's currently getting yet another degree because he wants to use that in his current work. He's getting a data science degree that will finish his master's this summer, right? From Pitt, the other school in Pennsylvania. The state's going to win another championship. So he's accomplished in academia. He's had over 80 peer-reviewed papers, mostly in physiology, aging, and wearable tech. So, but he's also had a lot of real-life experience. He was a collegiate track athlete, as is his bride. And he ran numerous triathlons and marathons. In fact, he was in 2 Kona Ironman in Hawaii, and he ran the Boston Marathon twice, I think. Not the same day, right?
Not that I know
of. He studies athletes at all levels, top professional athletes, world-class athletes from many different fields. He married our daughter Carolyn last April here on Spring Island, and he brought little Grace, our new granddaughter, to the family. We're very happy to have them here. So they live in Bluffton, and it's a household with 2 doctors. As Carolyn's a DPT, a doctor of physical therapy, which I'm sure she's treated a few of you in the crowd. She can't tell us, obviously. So, but they live in Bluffton, which is wonderful to have them so close by. So, without further ado, Greg.
challenge for tonight.
Is this thing on? Well,
Yes.
turn it on, did I?
Oh, you have it on, right?
Maybe. Yeah, it says it's muted though.
There you go.
Alright, I think this is working now?
Yes.
Alright, a lot of degrees, but clearly not enough. There's also a subtle irony of me standing up here talking to you all about my job at Whoop, because my first time meeting Alan, we were having dinner at the golf house. This is like my first time meeting the now father-in-law. And I was a professor at Georgia Southern, and he was sitting across the table from me, and he's like, "You like your job?" And I was like, "Oh, I love it." He's like, "You think you'll be doing this for the rest of your life?" I was like, "For sure." Here we are 4 years later, and I'm talking to you all about my job working in wearable tech at Whoop. But thank you guys for having me. Thank you, Tammy, for bringing me in, and excited to talk to you all today about wearable technology and where the future in this field is heading, which I think it's a really exciting time. As far as the structure of my talk, I want to start just by talking about what exactly Whoop is. And I know there's people who have Whoop in the crowd. As a matter of fact, I just helped fix one, which is great. There's other people who have Aura and Fitbit and Apple Watch, and though I work for Whoop, I don't have a massive dog in the fight. I think all of these devices can be used, if used right, to help improve our health and our fitness long term. But I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Whoop, what Whoop is, and what the pillars of Whoop are. And then I want to talk a little bit more about our research at Whoop, and how that can be applied practically to help you all hopefully live longer, healthier lives. So Whoop was founded in 2012 by Will Ahmed, who was in Harvard at the time. You can see Will here. And can anyone tell me who Will is talking to here? Does anyone know who that is? You can just shout it out. Anybody?
Is that Ronaldo?
No. That's Cristiano Ronaldo, right? One of the most famous soccer players in the world. And the truth is, Whoop was founded and originally given to the most elite athletes in the world. Will was a student at Harvard, studying late at night, and learned about measuring your biometrics overnight as a way to enhance the performance of athletes. He found some of the best engineers in Boston and said, "Help me build this device that I can track an individual's heart rate 24/7, 365 throughout their lives," right? He found Michael Phelps, Patrick Mahomes, Cristiano Ronaldo, literally the best of the best, and convinced them that this was something that was going to enhance their performance. They put it on, they realized the gains that they got from it, and they stuck with it. And so that's how Whoop started. And so we started on a mission to unlock human performance. And recently that's transitioned, so now we're on a mission to unlock both human performance and health span. Because both myself and Whoop truly believe that health and performance are interrelated, that health is performance and performance is health. And if that is indeed the case, then who better to learn how to live a longer and healthier lives than the fittest and most elite athletes in the entire world? And so what can we, as people who just want to be able to maybe get down and play with our grandkids, or, bend over and clean the toilet, and Carolyn's very glad I'm good at doing that. What can we learn from Olympians and world champions that can help us live longer and healthier? And I'm here to convince you that there's actually quite a bit we can learn. And it all starts with our behaviors, the things we're doing throughout the day. And Whoop gives you the power to measure that. So first, how are you sleeping? How is your cardiovascular system recovering from night to night? How much are you moving around during the day, and how stressed are you? Subjectively, we can all tell what this looks like, but objectively, Whoop gives you the power to track and to measure that. This is one of the first studies I published at Whoop, and it is data in support of wearables and Whoop in particular. We looked at people who wore Whoop every day and then those who didn't, and we saw some very compelling associations with Whoop wear. Specifically, Members who wore Whoop every day were more physically active, they slept more, and they had a higher heart rate variability. And I'll tell you a little bit more about what that is. But there's compelling evidence that just putting one of these devices on can be a facilitator of meaningful behavior change. Who wouldn't want to sleep additional 2.5 hours a week? And so where is Whoop different, right? That's maybe one of the questions we get. Where is Whoop different than maybe say something like the Apple Watch or the Fitbit or something like that? First, there's no screens. Whoop was actually really just there was a famous public thing where there was a picture of people in the White House, and Susie Wiles had something on her wrist. And everyone goes, oh, she's got an Apple Watch on her wrist. Well, no, it was actually a Whoop, which she was very allowed to wear. There's no screens, there's no distractions. So if what you're looking for is an Apple Watch that's going to be sending you text messages and annoying you throughout the day, Whoop is not for you. It's made to not be a distraction. Also, the battery life lasts for up to 14 days, which is pretty impressive compared to, maybe an Apple Watch, which we're charging every other night. It's built for 24/7 health monitoring. It's measuring your biometrics. It's looking at your sleep. And then it's looking at all the activities you do during the day. I'll never forget Grace's 5th birthday party was at a gymnastics place. And I was climbing on a rope and diving into, big pit of foam blocks, and Whoop correctly identified that I had been doing gymnastics. It literally knows everything you do. But then, different than the Apple Watch and the Fitbit, Whoop is taking those insights that are personalized to you versus you versus you yesterday, you versus you 2 weeks ago, and then it's giving you evidence-based recommendations every single day. What time should you go to sleep tonight? What time should you wake up tomorrow? How much activity should you do today? All these things personalized in your context, which is pretty neat. And so how does it do that? Well, there are 3 main pillars. It looks at how you slept last night. It looks at what did your resting heart rate variability, and respiratory rate look like last night in comparison to the past couple of weeks. And then it also looks, based on that, it makes personalized recommendations for what should you do to be active today. And it has a coach, I can pull it up and I should say, what are some good physical activities for me? Oh, go for a 40-minute run and then do 10 minutes of light stretching. It personalized to me because it knows I run. For Alan, maybe it's say, go for an hour-and-a-half bike ride, go lift weights for an hour, then do some yoga, and then you're Alan, so you're probably going to do something else. Okay, another really novel thing about Whoop, and this is one of probably my favorite features and one of the things that we've seen and we think can facilitate the biggest behavior change, is it gives you an idea of your functional or effective age. Now this isn't to be conflated with the same thing as the biological age, but what me and a team of other scientists did at Whoop is we went deep into the peer-reviewed literature and we identified the 9 levers that we believed were causally related to how long you live. So different pillars of sleep duration, sleep consistency, how much time you're exercising, whether you're doing strength training during the week, what your resting heart rate looks like. And it looks at those in the context of existing literature, millions of people and billions of days, and provides you with an idea of whether or not you're aging slower or faster than, where you would like to be, and then gives you personalized recommendations of things you can do to optimize that. So, a pretty neat feature. Personally, because I wake up every day and see Carolyn's heart rate variability is better, I've made adjustments in my life, and I'll talk about that. Okay, so we might not have known who Cristiano Ronaldo is, but can anyone tell me who this is? Patrick Mahomes, right? I hate the Kansas City Chiefs, and I've had to look up Patrick Mahomes' data all the time, but anyway, it's still pretty cool. And he is a big proponent of wearing Whoop. He was actually pretty sick before the Super Bowl 2 years ago, which could be why they lost. I knew it, no one else did. No joke. Alright, so one thing I want to talk about, because it does cause confusion, is heart rate variability. What is heart rate variability? Heart rate variability was first discovered, if you will, back in the 1700s. I want everyone to take 2 fingers, put them on the side of your neck so you feel your heart rate. Okay? You all are feeling your heart rate right now, and we know that we can measure how many times our heart beats in a minute, and that gives us our heart rate, right? Keep your fingers there. Well, what we don't always know is that the duration in between those heartbeats is not consistent. If I say your heart rate is 80 beats per minute, that doesn't mean that your heart, or let's say 60, that doesn't mean your heart is beating every second. As a matter of fact, now try this. When you breathe in, and then breathe out. You guys feel your heart rate change when you do that? If not, do it again.
I have no heart rate.
You have no heart rate. Alright, this is the problem. So hopefully you felt your heart rate, maybe not. If not, keep talking about that. But your heart rate actually changes paces when you're breathing in and breathing out. And that's what heart rate variability is. It's the variation in time between successive heartbeats. In general, greater variation in time or greater variability, higher heart rate variability, is associated with a more rested state. It's what we would refer to as being in this parasympathetic state, this rest and digest type state. Lower heart rate variability, that's the stress response, or it's associated with the stress response, this fight or flight response. And so heart rate variability can actually be very different even if our heart rate is the same. And so unlike resting heart rate, which will move around a little bit if you're stressed or if you don't sleep as well, heart rate variability is very responsive to all of these different life external stressors. And so that's why these wearables use it and leverage it as a window into what is your body's underlying physiological state. Is it rested or is it stressed? And then we can use those recommendations to recommend maybe you need to sleep more or you have very high heart rate variability for you. Today's a good day for you to do a lot of exercise. So let's talk about what are things that are good for heart rate variability. Most of these are fairly obvious. Getting good sleep between 7 and 9 hours a night, moving around, seeing sunlight, and avoiding eating before dinner. Or avoid eating too close to bed, sorry. Things that are bad for heart rate variability, obviously being sick. Anybody who has a wearable has probably noticed, or you may notice, one I think people notice, is their wearable often notices they're getting sick before they actually get sick, which is pretty cool. Looking at bright light right before you go to bed, being very stressed, or anybody who had a wearable knows alcohol. And that's one of the first things our members on MOOP know. And frankly, it's one of the reasons I've stopped drinking as much is because my wife has a much higher heart rate variability than me. And I'm not unique in that. Whoop has a recovery score, and that's proprietary, but it goes from 0 to 100. And so if I'm to tell you that the average of all of our millions of members on Whoop, a night of alcohol lowers their recovery score by 12 percentage points, that's quite a bit. When members have one drink more than usual, their resting heart rate is 3 beats per minute higher, their HRV is down 6 milliseconds, they sleep 12 minutes less per night, and they exercise actually less the next day. And when members get on Whoop, they see this. I just did a big analysis, and I have a paper in review right now, of 30,000 people who joined Whoop. And we looked at their data for 72 weeks after joining. And this is their journal data. 11.6 million days of data, literally daily. One of the largest longitudinal studies of alcohol use ever. And you can see this robust decline in alcohol use that's sustained over the first 72 weeks on Whoop. On average, members are having about 50 less drinks per year after that first year on Whoop to the year before. This is proof of concept, critical proof of concept, that wearable devices are actually facilitating meaningful behavior change. And that's pretty cool to say when we have a nice bar in the back. All right, kind of changing gears a little bit. One of the really neat things about wearables is we're able to get insight into modern trends or very kind of other subjects that would be very challenging to collect data on before anybody else does. Who in here knows someone or is on a GLP-1 drug, one of these weight loss drugs? Pretty much everyone in the room, right? And so these are very common. They're being used. I honestly think they're probably great. But the only data we have on GLP-1 drugs, for the most part, is coming from these large-scale pharmaceutical trials who don't really care about your sleep or your biometrics or your activity. It's not what they're paid for. And so one of the unique things we got to do at WHOOP was actually look at what happens when people start taking GLP-1 drugs. One kind of unique thing that we thought was pretty cool is, hold on. We looked at weight loss among WHOOP members who took GLP-1 drugs. After 12 weeks, they had lost, on average, 10% of their body weight. We actually saw greater weight loss in WHOOP members taking GLP-1 drugs than was reported in the clinical trials. Pretty interesting, right? We also saw that over 90% of those members achieved 12-week weight loss of greater than or equal to 5%, which is defined as clinically meaningful, and comparable to the numbers that are seen in clinical trials after a year to a year and a half. So here's possible evidence of WHOOP helping to support weight loss during GLP-1 journey. Now, interestingly, resting heart rate when you go on these drugs actually goes up and HRV goes down. And that's not to conflate these GLP-1 drugs necessarily being bad for your cardiovascular health, and as a matter of fact, they're by and large quite good for it. But it is interesting that it's inducing these underlying shifts that are thought to be unfavorable. What is really cool, though, is we saw that members on WHOOP who were taking GLP-1 drugs increased their physical activity on average by about 30 minutes per week. And then those who did the most physical activity, their resting heart rate didn't go up as much and their HRV didn't go down as much. No one's ever been able to show that before, but we were able to track it. So, pretty neat. We can conclude there that there's evidence for the importance of physical activity to temper these less favorable cardiovascular consequences of taking these GLP-1 drugs. Okay, changing gears a little bit from kind of health to performance. Who do I have here? Rory, yeah, exactly. Rory and Justin Thomas are two of the biggest proponents of WHOOP that we have, which is really neat. Unfortunately, I didn't have a great game this last weekend, but we'll forgive them for that. We were recently published a paper where we were able to study 520 professional golfers over 8 years, more than 35,000 nights of data. So this is a very large volume study. And what was really neat was that the better people slept, both in terms of length and consistency, the lower their resting heart rate, the higher their heart rate variability, the better the golf they played. But what stood out as the best predictor of how well they were going to play golf was their recovery score on WHOOP. As a matter of fact, a 10 percentage point increase in recovery score, keep in mind alcohol is lowering at 12 percentage points. A 10 percentage point increase in recovery score meant that in a given day of 18 holes, they were going to shoot on average half a stroke better. We know a golf tournament, 4 days of golf, that's 2 strokes better over the golf tournament. Right? 2 strokes. The Masters, for the last 10 years, has been decided by a single stroke 50% of the time. 2 strokes better for a 10 percentage point increase in your recovery score. Talk about evidence that these variables actually matter, right? Pretty neat. All right, another one, and probably nearest and dearest to my heart as an endurance athlete is getting to look at these professional cyclists. Tadej Pogačar, who's won Tour de France many years in a row and is probably about to win it again. Also wears WHOOP, and you can see he has it on his biceps there. You can wear it in different places. One of the things that's cool, but perhaps not surprising, is to look at the biometrics of these athletes. They have resting heart rates of 39 beats per minute. Their heart rate variabilities are double that of average individuals. They about 120, 130 milliseconds, whereas most people are around 60. As you might imagine, they recover better, and their sleep scores are also better. But when we look at these athletes, something really stood out about them that other people hadn't really considered. And that's how consistently they slept. So, sleep consistency is really a very simple concept. And what it really means is that you're asleep during the same hours every single night. When we look at our Tour de France cyclists, if I were to take all the millions of members on Whoop and rank them by their sleep consistency, from 1 being the best and however many million being the worst, I can almost guarantee you that the 20 professional cyclists who are competing in the Tour de France and Tour de France have the best sleep consistency scores. We see that the cyclists have sleep consistencies of 85, 90%. They're asleep during almost the exact same minutes every single night. And what's crazy is, even when they go through the tour, this doesn't change. They're totally unfazed by that. Many, many days of strenuous training. Average person, probably around 65%. And then, interestingly, shift workers and emergency doctors in particular, we partnered with Stanford on this. The doctors who are working in the OR have very poor sleep consistency. And it's not surprising when we look at that. We see that those shift workers and emergency medicine physicians, their rates of cardiovascular disease and cardiovascular mortality are far higher than their in-clinic comparators. So we knew sleep consistency mattered on Whoop, and we've known it for a long time. But just a couple of years ago, in 2023, the study came out showing the importance of sleep consistency. On the x-axis here, we have time, and the y-axis, survival. The green lines, those are the folks who have the best sleep consistency over here, and duration over here. What we see over here is that the best sleep consistency, the folks who have the best sleep consistency, depending on the reason for death, were between 20 to 50% less likely to die. And the sleep consistency actually was a far better predictor of mortality than sleep duration. So the American Heart Association only very recently incorporated sleep into its guidelines. And it talks about duration. But what we all know, and now what you know, and what these athletes probably don't actually know, they're probably just do it because that's the way God made them, is that sleep consistency or sleep regularity is the secret unlock. So what do? It's simple, right? That's the other thing that I like about sleep consistency is that unlike duration, where I can try to go to bed and cross my fingers and pray and I don't actually fall asleep. Sleep consistency is really easy. Just get in bed and wake up approximately the same time of day. And try to do that within 30-minute windows. Weekends are obviously challenging. Right? A consistent 7 hours is going to beat an inconsistent 8 hours anytime. And one of the nice things about Whoop and other wearables is they're tracking these things for you. Okay, so high-level takeaways. Activity, being physically active and recovery matter. Whether it's the influence of alcohol, whether it's taking GLP-1 drugs, or whether you're trying to win the Masters. These things matter. And as far as activity goes, something is better than nothing. Something will always beat nothing. Sleep matters. As a matter of fact, consistency matters more than duration. And the famous words of Peter Drucker, what gets measured, gets managed. So, thank you guys for your time.